What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2023 Acura Integra. So the Integra is back now after, being gone for a couple of decades almost here. And so it's like how they've always been. It's just a nicer Civic in many ways, but it's got a lot of really nice improvements. So even though it is Civic based, it has some components from a Civic. A lot of the other stuff is unique and really nice and does justify this vehicle's higher price tag over a Civic. This one, as tested, is a fully loaded A-Spec tech package, which is the only way you can get the manual and a few other performance goodies. But this one, as tested, is $36,895, so just under $37,000. And so, I think the Civic interior, which it shares a lot of components with, was already a little bit nicer than its price tag. I think it was honestly, it almost felt luxury-like for those new Civics. And so that means whenever you are in an actual luxury brand like this Acura, it really fits and still feels, worth that price tag, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's very nice inside. And compared to a Civic, I think it's definitely a step up for sure.
Yeah, and we'll get into all the different upgrades you get over a Civic here in a minute. But the first thing, sitting down in these seats, that is one of the first upgrades you do get. So here in this tech package, you get these 12-way adjustable driver seats, which have leather. Leather is standard, by the way, on all Integras, which is one nice thing over the Civic. And then you have this synthetic suede material in the middle here on these A-Spec versions. But it's a 12-way driver seat here, so you have adjustable lumbar and, lots of adjustments, which is really great for the driver.
And with the passenger, you don't get the height adjustment, but you can have your back and forth and your normal tilt option, and it is power, so that's really nice. It's not all manual or anything, which I think is definitely something that you definitely need in something like an Acura. It's a nicer brand, so there you go. And one thing I will add too is that the back seats don't have this suede Alcantara material, which is really nice, especially if you have kids or something and you're nervous about them getting anything dirty. This is really great that they don't have that back there.
Yeah, and that is a really nice inclusion. And so, yeah, that's a great point about the back seat there. And one other point I do want to make about the passenger seat is that that 4-way power adjustment is part of this tech package. So unfortunately, if you don't go for this fully loaded version of the Integra, you do have manual seats, which is kind of crazy for a luxury brand to give you manual seats, so a little bit unfortunate there, but at least, here on these upper trims, you do have the power seat, which is nice. They are heated seats, by the way, as well, but there's no cooling, which is another thing. This is entry-level luxury, but, there's a lot of normal vehicles that still even offer cooled seats, and you have no cooled seats available here in the Integra whatsoever, no matter how much you pay. So that's something I wish they would add, but, aside from that, again, they're super comfortable seats. As a sporty vehicle, I do wish there was a little bit more bolstering here as well. I think, for those of you who are cross-shopping this with a Civic Si, which has the same engine and stuff, that has seats that definitely hug you in a lot better. These seats are a lot looser. It's a little more relaxed. So I kind of wish there was maybe either adjustable bolstering or an extra seat option to give you, an option for a sports seat or something. But still, not bad seats. They're comfortable and pretty good. So overall, pretty well done, I think. Next, moving on to the steering wheel here. It's basically a Civic steering wheel, except that it has this little A-Spec badge and a little bit of extra metal, I think, down here for the lower spoke. But otherwise, all the same buttons you get on a Civic, just with the Acura badge. And that's a good thing, though, because the Civic steering wheel was fantastic. I loved it. It has a perfect 9/3 grip, nice little 10/2 notches. These buttons also feel really nice and high quality, so they feel appropriate in an Acura, in my opinion. And so overall, it's a really nice wheel. Now, one other thing to note as far as luxury stuff, a lot of the other luxury competitors will offer a heated steering wheel. There is no factory heated steering wheel option in the Integra. Acura does this weird thing where they force, unless you go for the top trims of some of the upper models, everything else, there's always this dealer installed heated steering wheel option. So if you want to go to the dealership and have them swap steering wheels with you, you can pay a few $100 to get a heated steering wheel that way on any trim. So I guess it's nice you don't have to go for a high trim for that, but it just would be nice to offer it from the factory so you don't have to be swapping steering wheels at the dealership. But Anyway, just one other thing I want to mention there. But moving on to the gauges, one nice thing about all Integras is they come standard with these 10.2-inch digital gauges, which is a nice improvement over the Civics, where you only get these digital gauges on the top trims of that. So having the digital gauges is great to have here in all Integras. It's not quite as large as like the Audi. Their digital gauges are like, I think, a 12-inch screen. This is a little bit of a smaller display, but still is really nice. And I love the adjustments and the customization you have here. On the left-hand side there, you can see you can have album art for whatever you're listening to, phone functions, anything you want to have displayed there. And on the right side, you know, there's all the usual basic stuff there. And so, you know, I think it's really well set up, you know, for all the basics. Now, again, this being a little bit of a sportier vehicle, it would be nice to see some type of performance gauges. You know, it'd be cool to see a boost gauge or a G meter, things like that. None of that is present here, so it certainly seems like Acura is going for the luxury side of things more so than the sporty side of things with the Integra, at least the way they have that set up. And also, you do have here on these tech package versions this large head-up display, which is great to have too. It's nice and bright. It'll also show you, in addition to your speed, it'll show you the speed limit, navigation instructions, your safety information, all that type of stuff up in there as well. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here though, this one has this 9-inch touchscreen, which is a really fantastic screen, but it's also only in this tech package. Otherwise, you go down to a 7-inch screen, which isn't a bad screen either, but again, for a luxury brand, it would be nice to have something bigger than the 7-inch screen. Also, the 7-inch screen only has wired-in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This 9-inch screen, only in the tech package, is the only way you get the wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. So keep that in mind if you're shopping different trims. It's a really great head unit though. Same exact thing as the Honda system, just with slightly different graphics for some of the stuff. But otherwise, I mean, everything is identical, and that's a good thing because it's very easy to use. It's very intuitive. It even has smart shortcuts where it can learn the things you use the most and you know, give you those options automatically. But I just love that you can customize every single one of these little tiles, so you can have, you know, only the things you need to use every day and have everything else on the other pages. If you're never going to use AM radio, you can have that way far back, and so it's nice you can customize all that.
And it is very passenger friendly, except for the fact that all of the physical buttons are right next to the driver. Once again, volume, audio, all of that stuff is right next to the driver, who has that on their wheel. So why it's next to the driver, I have no idea. It's still reachable, but I would wish that it would either, you know, be in the middle or something different than where it is now.
Yeah, and that's something that's always funny. We've seen with a lot of other vehicles where everything is driver centric.
But, you know, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, well, and another thing though, it is, you know, since Acura wants this to compete with the Audi A3, the Mercedes CLA, BMW 228i, all those vehicles don't even have a volume knob on the screen. They're all down by the shifter in the middle. So from a competitive standpoint, if they want to compete with the Germans, anyone coming from a German vehicle is used to having the volume knob down here. And so this is going to be a switch, and you know, that's one thing the Germans do better is, you know, the passenger controls that a lot easier in the middle there.
Yeah.
Anyway, still a great system, and one of the best things about this stereo system is it's hooked up to this ELS Studio 3D stereo. It's a surround sound system, and it's 16 speakers and 530 watts, and it is fantastic. This is one of the vehicles, these ELS 3D systems have these speakers in the actual roof, which is something you don't get very often, and in this segment it's non-existent. So previously, I would say the Mazda 3 was the best stereo, hands down. It wasn't even a contest in this segment. This gives that a run for its money. I mean, technically, the Mazda is not a luxury brand, so it's kind of off the hook, technically speaking. But, you know, I haven't done extensive testing on the CLA, the A3, or I've tested out the Burmester system in other Mercedes, and I've tested out the S3's audio system in the Audi, but haven't had any time in the BMWs. But all I can say is this is a fantastic stereo for under $40,000. Hands down, probably my favorite stereo in that price range of under 40 grand. It sounds so good. It's so clear and crisp, so powerful. You have a subwoofer there in the hatch that really gives you some nice bump if you're listening to, you know, anything that has bass. And it's just really well done, and that is a key improvement over the Civic. If you're someone who loves good stereos, the Civic has a very good Bose system, also one of the best systems out there in its segment, but this system definitely takes it to the next level, and that is something also exclusive to this tech package, so keep that in mind. And then moving down to the climate controls here in the Integra, they are identical to a Civic. This whole area is identical, same buttons, same materials, same everything. These knobs all have this really nice resistance to them. It's metal, it feels really good, it sounds nice, it's very simple. There's only a couple of buttons here, really well done. And so I think, again, that's another thing. I'm glad they kept the Civic stuff because it was already fantastic, already felt expensive. But one other thing I do have to mention, getting into some of the material comments on this vehicle, is that on the driver's side here, you have no padding down by your knee. And this is something Acura sometimes does a pretty good job with having padding down here. And some of the other vehicles in this segment don't have padding here either, but like, again, one of the primary competitors I think to this vehicle still is the Mazda3, which does have padding down here by your knee. And so again, the Mazda, not even technically a luxury brand, but still feels more luxury than this in areas like that, you know, where some of the materials in this still feel a little cheap and Civic based. But I mean, all the other stuff on the doors, you know, all feels nice. All your elbow points are nicely padded, and so everything else feels pretty good in my opinion. It's just that knee thing.
Yeah, but on the passenger side, you do have this knee part, which is softer and better than the driver's side.
Yeah, so that's one thing they did think of the passenger. Like, hey, we'll give the passenger all this nice padding and then forget about the driver. And it's kind of funny because you look at other Acura interiors, they have this kind of V-shaped thing that always happens in their interiors the way they design them. And so I think with the Integra, they just ran out of room. They're like, okay, well, we want to do the V thing, but we don't have enough room on the driver's side here. And they didn't want to completely redo all this Civic based stuff in the middle, so they're like, all right, we'll do it on the passenger side, and that's it. It's kind of a little inconsistent with the design, you know, language, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing I will add about this center console is that they do have this piano black plastic, and I have not even touched it yet, and there's plenty of fingerprints and hand prints on here.
Smudges and
scratches and everything under the sun. You have bits of dust here, so it is very visible. It is very annoying, especially for anybody who's a neat freak out there. It's gonna freak you out. I don't know. I'm never crazy about this piano black plastic. I get that when it's nice and clean, it looks beautiful and shiny and pretty, but the minute you're actually using it or touching it or doing anything near it, it gets dirty and it looks gross. And so I just feel like we need to get rid of this piano black plastic, make it a matte plastic or something like that. I know that plastic doesn't look that great in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like there's a lot of different types of plastics and things like that that you can use to make it still look very nice and luxurious. You can figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and Honda has figured it out, because like Honda in the Civic, that's one of the things we praised, was that there was this like grooved plastic material that still looked nice, still felt nice, still even had a little bit of a glossy feel to it, but wasn't this, you know, fingerprint prone material. And so Honda knows like how to do this well, and then I guess maybe they just gave into the peer pressure of like, oh no, it's a luxury branded vehicle, we must have piano black because that's what everyone expects, because that's what some of the other brands do also include. This is a industry-wide thing with everyone doing piano black, so we're not picking on Acura here, but it's just funny that I think they knew better with the Civic, and that they still decided to, you know, go against their own wisdom and put the piano black, you know, here in the Acura.
Yeah, I just feel like there's so many more options now as opposed to, you know, 10 years ago or something. But I think that, you know, it definitely could use some improvement.
Yeah. Otherwise, all the buttons here, you know, for the window switches and everything else feel nice, and so, you know, all very good there. Moving on to storage spaces here in the Integra. It's, again, basically the same as the Civic, but that's also a very good thing. So you have nice large pockets here in the doors with a bottle holder. In the middle, you have a wireless charging pad here in the tech package versions, otherwise it'd just be a normal bin, but it's a pretty good charging mat. So it's got little brackets here to hold it in place. It's rubberized and does a pretty good job of, you know, making sure that your phone isn't sliding all over the place. You also see a USB jack, USB-C, and another power outlet in there. And then you also have these nice deep cup holders, which I appreciate especially with a manual transmission, because it means you can have a reasonably sized drink in here and you're not going to be knocking it out of the cup holder or, you know, banging your arm into stuff. And I also love how they maximize the space where you have little cutouts here. So you have, you know, a little bit of a space here for your elbow that's nice and softly padded, but they don't have to, you know, have this whole thing come out and only give you one cup holder. But anyway, you open that up and you'll see a pretty deep cubby. It's not super wide or, you know, super long or anything, but it's nice and deep. and just nice to have a little bit of extra storage in there. Moving on to the back seat here in the Integra, it's pretty good. So, you know, you'll think that this is about 6 inches longer than a Civic hatchback, that you'd have a little bit more space back there. Unfortunately, you don't. I think most of the space just goes to styling, because the interior dimensions are basically identical. The rear seat legroom is identical to a Civic sedan or hatch, but that's okay because the Civic interiors are really nice and spacious these days. I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I have about 4 inches of legroom to spare, so really nice and spacious. A good amount of headroom as well here. It can be a little tight towards the back if you lean your head back a little bit, but as long as you're sitting up reasonably upright, you know, it's not a bad amount of headroom there. And then also you'll see we have a rear-facing massive convertible car seat here in the back, and that also fits in here really well. And so again, like, you're sitting here in front of it, and I mean, how do you feel? I know I had probably a couple of inches here for my knees, so I didn't feel crammed whenever I was sitting there.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's room. I'm never crazy about sitting in front of the car seat, but I feel like I'm not super cramped right up against the front of the car, which I hate. I'm very claustrophobic, especially when it comes to driving in cars very close to the front. So I think that it turned out really well. I feel comfortable sitting here. So.
Yeah, and that's something that most other compact cars, and honestly even some like compact SUVs or larger vehicles, struggle with that still. So I think it's really impressive the way they maximize space here. I mean, I think, you know, both of us probably are still sitting up a little bit further than we naturally would.
Yes.
But it's much, much better than most others. I mean, like something like a Corolla, for example, I mean, your knees are like in the dashboard. So, I mean, they did a really good job here with the space. And even compared to like the Mazda3 has a smaller back seat and therefore a tighter front area here. So that's going to be tighter. Even an Audi A3, Mercedes CLA, BMW 228, those all I think are going to be a little bit tighter than this as well. So really, I think this is going to be one of the more spacious options in this segment. And so really well done with that. You also will see back there's a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it, pockets in those doors, and then you'll also see they have 2 USB jacks whenever they look forward here in this center console, but no rear air vents, which is something that you do get in some of the competitors. An Audi A3, for example, will give you rear air vents, and a lot of the others do as well. And so not having that is a key luxury feature people expect, and so that's a little bit of a disappointment. Again, I think that's partially to blame on the Civic bones, where, you know, I guess they would have had to do different routing for the HVAC and stuff in order to get that, you know, available there. So a little bit unfortunate, but not a huge deal.
Yeah, but I still feel like if you're paying for that Acura brand, you should be able to get things that are a little bit upgraded from your standard Civic.
Yeah, it should be more than nicer seats, nicer stereo, you know. Yeah, I feel like they could have spent a little bit of extra money to, you know, try and route some air to the back there for those rear occupants. But otherwise, yeah, a really comfortable back seat too, and those rear seats do fold down as well if you want more storage space. But then moving on to the cargo space there in the rear. So it's very similar to a Civic hatch. I think it is about 0.2 off from a Civic hatch. And so basically what I've kind of concluded is the Civic hatch has a deeper hatch. It has more depth and the floor is lower. But here in the Integra, it's a little bit longer. I don't think it's 6 inches longer, even though this is a 6-inch longer vehicle. I think some of that length goes up front as well. But it's, I'd say, a couple inches longer there, so that makes up for the fact it's not quite as deep. When you lift up the floor, you will see that you have just basically a bunch of insulation and stuff, and fix-a-flat kit. There is an actual spare tire well there, and even a little hole drilled to secure a spare tire, but there is no spare tire here, at least in this one. But so it's not like you can remove that or anything to give you any extra space, unfortunately. But still, I think a pretty good size hatch. It's going to be more cargo space than what you're going to be getting in any of the competitors, which don't offer a hatch, by the way. So, and also compared to even a Mazda3 hatch, if you do want to cross shop with that, that's going to have you know, a few cubic feet less space than this hatch as well. So really good from a practicality standpoint. It's going to be a lot more flexible with, you know, swallowing up larger items than, you know, some of the other luxury competitors will be. Anyway, I think that's all of our thoughts here on the Integra. I mean, overall, I think they did a really nice job. You know, I still struggle with the fact that it's about $7 grand more than a Civic. You know, it just really comes down to what you want. You know, if you're someone who wants the absolute best stereo possible, you know, you like all the luxury stuff, you know, it could be $7 grand nicer. I think it certainly is cheaper than the Germans. You know, all the German competitors are going to be in the 40s, comparably equipped, so you are saving some money there. But then you look at like a Mazda 3, if you don't need the most amount of space possible, that has some nicer materials. You know, still has a fantastic stereo, very upmarket feeling and luxury feeling in that Mazda for much less. A little bit less horsepower as well, but you can also, even with the Mazda, get an all-wheel drive turbocharged version with 250 horsepower, way more power than this, for less money than this as well. And I'll talk more about that in my driving review, which I will link above if you want to hear all my thoughts on how this drives. But just, you know, from an interior standpoint, you know, I'd say, yes, it does feel close to, you know, it's about a $37,000 interior. I think it does feel worth the price. It's just in this segment and what it competes with. You know, I think it's a little bit of a tough sell, but I think personally, you know, if you're someone who really wants, you know, the Honda engineering and, you know, you're excited about the Integra, I think that, you know, you're not going to feel ripped off in this interior. It does feel nice for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, that's all of our thoughts on the Integra. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Acura for providing us with this Integra to review for you guys today. And thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.